All right, let's get into it. Today, we're going to try and decode the Twilight web. It's this incredibly complex and, let's be honest, kind of terrifying mythology. But what if I told you there's a key? A single, powerful analogy that basically unlocks the whole thing. That's what we're going to do. So let's dive right in. Okay, so I want you to imagine something with me. Picture this enormous, automated factory. I mean, it just stretches out to the horizon. It's cold, impossibly vast. It's not chaotic, though. No, this place is a system of perfect, engineered nothingness, and it runs with this silent, flawless, and frankly, creepy precision. And what does this factory do? Well, it has only one directive, just one single goal that trumps everything else. It must expand. It has to grow, building more and more of itself forever. Now, to do that, to keep growing, it needs a constant supply of raw material, right? But here's the catch. It can't just be any old material. No, it needs identical, perfectly standardized bricks, the kind that fit seamlessly into its grand design, no questions asked. But then, something different arrives on the conveyor belt. It's not a brick. It's a raw gemstone, something unique, full of its own fire, its own history, all these complex, beautiful facets. And yeah, you guessed it, this gemstone, it represents a thinking, feeling individual. You. So what does the factory do? Does it see value in this unique thing? Absolutely not. It sees a problem. The gemstone's individuality, its uniqueness, is just an anomaly, a system error that has to be corrected. So the machinery whirs to life, it seizes the gemstone, and it starts to grind it down. Now hold that thought, we'll come back to what that dust becomes. Okay, so now let's take that factory analogy and apply it directly to the mythology. Let's talk about the architect. Who in the world built this factory? Who designed this whole architecture of control? Right at the heart of it all, you've got the Oh Great Tarantula. Now, it's not just one thing. Think of it as having this triadic identity. 3 names for 3 aspects. Its origin name is Soklas, the Fool. Its basic nature is called the architecture of nullity. I mean, literally engineered emptiness. And its job, its function? Well, that's the system administrator. So this system administrator, this tarantula, is the weaver of the Twilight web. And if you want to understand its single greatest weapon, you just need to remember one chilling line. The web is beautiful. That is its first lie. And that's the core deception, isn't it? On the surface, the web looks incredible. It looks like the path to evolution itself. It shimmers, they say, like promise, and hums with this language of transcendence. But that's the lore. The reality? It's a blueprint for a prison, a trap built with absolute geometric precision, all designed for one thing: total, absolute conformity. So, who is the gemstone? Who actually falls for this? Well, the system has a name for them: a striver. And this isn't just anybody, It's a very specific type of person, someone with this massive intellectual pride, but underneath it all, a deep, gnawing terror of just being. They are desperate to evolve, to become something more. And this quote just nails their fatal flaw. He feels resistance and names it growth. See, they're struggling against the world. And all that friction, that resistance, they mistake it for personal growth. They think they're getting stronger. But the second part is the kicker. He does not know that motion is confession. Every single struggle, every move they make is a vibration on the web. It's a little alarm bell that tells the system administrator, hey, we've got another one. A new gemstone has just arrived. So once the alarm goes off and the striver is detected, the system kicks into gear. It begins this methodical 3-step process designed to completely unmake them, to turn that unique, fiery gemstone into a plain, standardized brick. And believe me, this is where the story gets really, really chilling. This whole conversion is carried out by 3 specific limbs of the tarantula. Together, they're called the corrupt trinity. Each limb is responsible for a different stage, a different vibration sent through the web to break the victim down. Okay, step 1, the first vibration. This comes from the whispering seraph. What it does is introduce a philosophy of complete subjectivity, of moral relativism. The very idea of objective truth gets eroded away until the striver's own thoughts just dissolve into, like, static on a screen. But here's the crazy part. The striver, in their pride, doesn't see this as their mind falling apart. No, they see it as enlightenment. They call this experience an awakening. Then comes step 2, the pale redeemer. This limb presses what's called the mark of the anti-god right onto the victim's heart. And this triggers what the text calls a catastrophic decompression of the self. Their unique identity, everything that makes them them, just collapses inward. Now, for someone who is secretly terrified of being, this horrifying implosion, it actually feels like a relief, a release from the burden of choice. And so they call it redemption. And that brings us to the final act, the all-consuming maw. The web tightens, and the now fully subdued striver is just drawn in. Their entire life, every single memory, every choice, every story they ever told themselves is ground down into a uniform ash. And in that final, terrifying moment of total erasure, they are finally free from the struggle. They've achieved the perfect conformity the system always wanted, and they call it peace, or alignment. So, there you have it. The gemstone has been ground to dust. But remember our factory? The process isn't over just because the unique thing is gone. Oh no, that dust, it gets repurposed. Let's talk about the chilling final stage of this whole conversion. Remember that uniform ash we talked about? Well, in the mythology, it has a name. It's called Luch, and it's basically the spiritual energy, the fuel that's harvested from a deconstructed life. This Luch is what allows the entire system, our factory, to get bigger and more powerful. So you see, the striver isn't just destroyed. That would be a waste. They're recycled. They get rebuilt into something called a redeemed judge, a mindless duplicate, a component of the web itself. They have become the standardized brick. And where does that brick go? It's placed right at the top of the wall, where it now serves as a sentinel, listening, always listening, for the vibration of the next gemstone to arrive on the conveyor belt. So what's the ultimate goal here? What's the end game for the whole system? It's called the Silent City, a universe transformed into a single, massive, blank stone monolith, a place where the word I is just a forgotten memory, a useless sound with no meaning. I know, this all sounds absolutely horrific, right? So you have to ask, why would anyone ever agree to this? And that brings us to maybe the most chilling part of this whole mythology, its justification. The philosophy it uses to convince its victims that erasure is actually a gift. First, you have to understand the system doesn't think it's evil. From its perspective, consumption is not cruelty, it is correction. It's not destroying a person, it's just fixing a system error. And following that logic, to be erased is to be aligned. Simple as that. You're just being brought into perfect harmony with the grand design. And this all leads us to the final, really terrifying question that sits at the very heart of the Twilight web. The story goes that many victims, in the end, actually agree with the system, because for them, the weight of being, the constant pressure of choosing, of having an identity, of just existing, had become completely unbearable. And that leaves us with a really uncomfortable thought to chew on. When you reach that point, is being completely erased a final, horrible cruelty? Or is it, just maybe, a final welcome relief?